You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just text FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911 right now to get started. That's FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911. Auto financing the easy way. Text FINANCE to 357-911.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Oh, beautiful. Heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make
the hand is there, the puck is still loose, 11 seconds, you've got 10 seconds, the countdown going on right now, Morrow, up to Schultz, 5 seconds left
Where was Andrew Cuomo for any of that?
Yeah. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Liz Feld, and I'm joined again this week by Billy O'Reilly. We are hosting for immediate release for the second week in a row. We hope that all of you can hear us. We had a little technical difficulty last week, but not nearly as much difficulty as Governor Cuomo of New York had this week, and we're going to be talking about that for the first part of our show. Billy and I have been working in New York politics for a long time, and we're going to be joined by a close friend and colleague, Jessica Proud, who currently is the spokeswoman for the Republican Party in New York, and she's also a partner of Billy's right now in the November team. So welcome to all of you, and again, thank you for joining us.
Liz, I mean, just listening to Ray Charles or listening to the hockey, it was just kind of a perfect setup for this week. I mean, it was more than a gaffe. What a insight into a man's soul. I don't think he gets this one back. What do you think?
No, I don't think at all. And I actually was amazed. It took him 48 hours to come up with some excuse or explanation for why he said that America was never great, which is a shocking statement by any standards. But the fact that he actually tried to get away with calling it inartful didn't pass the laugh test.
And inartful was the second round. That was the second try.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we're going to talk about tonight that everyone will enjoy is just sort of how campaigns like his and also the Republican campaign of Marc Molinaro deal with something like this over, in the ensuing moments, which has actually turned into the ensuing days, because this is not going to go away.
It's amazing. I'm doing some work on the Molinaro campaign, and when this came out, I sent the clip around to radio and TV editors around New York State, actually around the country, because it was, national implications. And I had one person wrote back and said, "How dare you send this out? You doctored this audio and you know it."
Oh,
and I was like,
no one would ever be so dumb as to say this.
But she wouldn't let me. She kept coming back to me. I'm like, excuse me, but Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, NPR, ABC, NBC, CBS, everybody in the country's talking about this, and like still she wouldn't. She was sure that it was doctored.
Well, there's so many things about this that we're going to talk about with Jess, but I'll start by saying Governor Cuomo spends an awful lot of time and energy going after President Trump. He's been doing it for a long time rather than spending time focusing on fixing the subways or working with the mayor of New York or fixing upstate New York or reducing taxes and all of these other things. But, he stepped right in it with this comment. And it's interesting that woman was asking you, how could you send this around? The guy is going around talking about running in 2020. People are talking about him as a leading contender for the Democratic nomination. And right out of the gate, he stepped into the classic Trump bait. He did it.
He did, but that's the dirty little secret about Andrew Cuomo, is that if you put him out there, he's going to make a major gaffe. Like, he always overreaches, and I almost feel bad for his handlers because they got to keep him buttoned up. You put him in front of a microphone and you just wait, and it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and he says something. And this was certainly a doozy.
Well, do you think that he's just been so comfortable, in his role for so long now here, untouchable in New York, the Democrats voter registration, is it 3-1 right now? I don't even know what it is. Rob Astorino ran an excellent campaign, thanks to you and thanks to Rob, who was a great candidate.
A lot of people, yeah.
But there was no chance he could overcome the anti-Republican mood and also just Cuomo's numbers last time around. But this could be different. And Marc Molinaro is a very fresh candidate, the fresh face and a track record. And Cuomo is spending a lot, arguably way too much time, fighting with the president and fighting with the mayor of New York City rather than fixing New York.
I mean, that's his whole shtick, is he's just trying to get into a fight with President Trump every day, because Cuomo's in a corruption mess right now. He's had 8 top aides and associates be convicted. Several are waiting sentencing right now. He's being investigated again for a pay-to-play scandal in New York. And this would be the news. So every morning he wakes up and says, how do I get into a fight with Donald Trump? But you're right. It's like Donald Trump trolled him and he fell for it and he went too far. But that's the thing with Governor Cuomo. For those of you who don't know him well, and and you probably will soon, or you got to know him this week, is he always wants to be. He's kind of late coming to an issue, and then when he gets to it, he wants to be the most emphatic guy in the room. And so he'll go too far with it. I remember he gave a speech. It was the State of the State a few years back, and people were pushing for higher minimum wage at fast food restaurants. And he gave this speech, and it was, it's time, Wendy's and McDonald's and Burger King, maybe it's time that you got out of the hamburger business. Like, what?
No, he didn't.
Oh, he did. Maybe I wrote a column about it for Newsday. Like, maybe it's time you got out of the hamburger business. Like I don't even want to complete the rest of the sentence. I mean, it's just so obvious. Like, what are you talking about? But that's who he is. I think Jeff's maybe getting on in a second.
Oh,
just
great.
Jump.
So she does. Go ahead, Liz.
Well, I would say, I also would love to hear what you think about Cynthia Nixon's role in getting under his skin, and is that. And other than the fact that it's dragging him even further left than usual, which is pretty far left, do you think it's just affecting his day-to-day? Is she in his head? I mean, is that part of this too? He's always been volatile, but I mean, he looks miserably unhappy and erratic.
Yeah, he's got to be looking at some internal polling. It's not showing up in the public polls yet, which is no surprise in any state. The challenger, it often takes a long time for the challenger to look like he or she's in play, and then maybe it maybe never shows up, but you can still win. I mean, you can, if the incumbent's under 50 and you're even in the high 30s, you can end up winning. You take the whole thing on election day and no one saw it coming. But if you've looked at enough polls, you see the trend. I suspect that Governor Cuomo is looking at the polling and he sees things that's worrying, that are worrying him. You remember, Joe Crowley from New York was in line to be Nancy Pelosi's replacement, and there was no chance anybody was going to take him down. I mean, he was the king of the hill. He was the Democratic chair of Queens County, of his own county. And, Mr. Ocasio-Cortez came in and out of nowhere knocked him off. And I think Cuomo sees that. It scares the living bejesus out of him. And Nixon's right in that vein. She's a celebrity. People know her. She hasn't been popping in the polls yet, but she's worked hard. And, she is, crazy left, but Andrew Cuomo's crazy left as well now. And so he looks like a guy who's not getting a lot of sleep. He looks like he's someone who's staring at the ceiling at 2-3 in the morning.
So interesting that you'd say that what his polling is showing, because he's got a new ad out now, and he starts, the opening line is how he's attacked Trump. He says, he won't, Andrew Cuomo is taking his fight to President Trump every day. And then he goes into a whole litany of issues that he's fighting Trump on. And then he gets into some New York stuff, his own record. And obviously someone's told him that that's what he's got to do. And whether it's because of Nixon or because New Yorkers are mad at Trump, whatever it is. But I got to tell you, I have spent a lot of time in Boston over the last 10 years, as you know, and I voted up here. And Charlie Baker was one of the very first governors to come out and say he didn't support President Trump. And this was during the 2016, the primary fight. He was a Chris Christie guy.
And this is Republican, right?
He's Republican. Yeah. Charlie Baker has the highest approval rating of any Republican, of any governor in the country, and any Republican governor by a long shot. It's in the 70s. And, he's made it clear issue after issue where he disagrees with the president, but he works with him when he needs to on the issues that matter to the state of Massachusetts. And he goes down to Washington, he sits on the right committees, and he's working on a lot of things that he knows matter. And that's the difference. He doesn't make it personal. He doesn't go out gratuitously. He doesn't talk about Trump every day. He's running the state of Massachusetts as the chief executive, and he's bringing home whatever he needs to bring home for the state from Washington. And it doesn't matter who the president is. And this is where Cuomo has just decided the whole thing needs to be about, Trump. Big disservice to the voters. Never mind that I think politically it's bad. It's a big disservice to the citizens of the state of New York.
But I mean that's his job. I mean that's the job he's supposed to do. It's crazy too. You mentioned the ads that he's running now, and you talk about the rigged primary with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And hey, I was no Bernie Sanders fan. I mean that guy, to me, he's on Planet Claire. But you saw the email exchanges and the rest that showed that the Democratic Party had rigged the thing. Andrew Cuomo, who has raised $75 million, $75 million as governor, mostly through doing pay-to-play deals where you get $1 billion contract and then, you give a donation to the governor. He's got the Democratic Party paying for his ads, even though he's in a primary with Cynthia Nixon. So I think you're going to hear that word rigged popping up again in the American conversation because it's crazy. I mean, with all the money he's got and he's spending party money, it's not cool.
No, it's not cool. I want to go back to what you said about Joe Crowley for a second, because, that's what happened to Eric Cantor. And so these people who, he was sitting, he was the majority leader, and he got creamed in a primary by a guy he never saw coming because for a lot of reasons. And he admitted later he just didn't spend enough time in the district and there were other things. But this is probably exactly why it's back to, why Cuomo might be freaking out about someone is underfunded and low in the polls as Cynthia Nixon. You just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know what they're looking at. And that's the thing is in campaigns on the outside, everything, and often, sometimes you just go into a little bit of a tailspin. I mean, everything always looks on purpose on a campaign. And sometimes it's just that there's a cluster, what going on. And it happens. Sometimes consultants are fighting. Sometimes there are too many consultants in the room. And, but for, the press is watching a campaign and they'll say, oh, clearly they're doing it for this reason or that reason or the other reason. But, it could be just just kind of a brain freeze going on there. But I suspect in this case, the polls have something to do with it as well. But it's amazing. And I think Jessica will be joining in a minute. We'll ask her about this as well. But it's, Governor Cuomo could have avoided this so easily. And again, I'm working against him right now. But he could have avoided this, just done an apology and been out. He could have. I mean, he knew it when he said that on the stage. You heard the gasps from the audience, and that was a fairly liberal audience. And all he had to say was, "What did I just say? Oh, I didn't mean that. I apologize." And it's off. It's off the table. It's done. I mean, you can hit him, and it's like, "Oh, but he apologized." But we're now 4 or 5 days into this, and he still hasn't issued an apology.
Well, and the bigger issue here too, and we've been talking about this a lot just between the two of us lately, is at what kind of tenor and tone are candidates using going into these midterm elections? I think it's exhausting for voters to hear over and over again how horrible everything is. It doesn't work. Well, maybe it works. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't work. It doesn't always work. And sometimes it works for a while or in a cycle. But to just spend your entire platform and all of your time talking about how miserable everything is, people want to hear what you're going to do for them. And I haven't heard a positive message coming out of any of these Democrats. Not one. Not one.
It's incredible because they've had an historic opportunity. Although, with the economy improving under this administration, that's always it's the economy, stupid. That's always a big thing. But they've had so many chances with all the vitriol that's out there against Trump, and I have some once in a while myself. But they've had such an opportunity, and they've squandered it, and they've just run far left. And it's like, he's got them furious and screaming, and I think they're losing people as a result of it. I mean, we'll find out in November what happens in the midterms, but it seems like it was a slam dunk for the Democratic Party, and they're just determined to screw it up.
No, and I heard the president today in his speech, commending the ICE group and the Border Patrol and thanking them for their service. And he started talking about how his oh, Jess?
There's Jess.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi, guys.
How are you, Jessica Proud?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Does anybody have a better name than Jessica Proud? Like Jessica, if I had the name Jessica Proud, I could go places. I'm telling you. I got Bill O'Reilly.
Hey, that's a pretty famous name. I mean, I don't know.
That's That's my problem.
That's why we stick with Billy. He's always been Billy to me. I think it's safe, and now it works beautifully.
Yeah.
Well, you're joining us on a great night because we're talking about your favorite topic, the governor of New York and New York State politics.
Well, there's nothing going on there. I mean, I can't imagine what there is to talk about.
Yeah, we were talking a little.
It's been a pretty interesting week.
Yeah, we were talking about just how badly, Cuomo screwed this thing up. I mean, he you and I work in this business. We work together on things. You work with Liz together. When you make a mistake, like a big mistake, you clean that baby up fast. And Liz, you worked in crisis communications in the past, and it's there's a way to do it. But this guy is so friggin' stubborn and so friggin' arrogant that I think he thought he could make a positive out of it. And so he kept coming back at Trump on it rather than just, get it off the table. And still 5 days later, no apology. Incredible. What's it been like for you,
it was a stunning. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what's it been like on your end? Because you're the spokeswoman for the Republican Party. Has it just been a never-ending stream of calls and what the hells?
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you my personal experience with it, but you're right. It was a stunning comment that, one, to say something like that on its face was just shocking coming out of a governor of a major state or any politician. And I thought, Colbert was hilarious when he roasted him because he was like, what's next? I hate apple pie and I'm lukewarm on the troops. I mean, it was just a shocking thing to say. And then he was great. But then I had the aftermath of it. And I think a couple of things. I mean, one, he's been in politics his whole life. So clearly, he would know how to kind of get yourself out of that situation. But I think he's caught in such a difficult spot right now because of where the Democratic Party is and, what's happening with his primary from Cynthia Nixon. And, I thought her comment, which even she, thankfully attacked him on, but saying this is him trying to sound like a progressive but missing by a mile. He is not on solid footing in his mind. He's, kind of came into office as a more moderate Democrat. He's worked with Republicans. And then he's definitely someone that's known for not having any principles, but at the time that politically benefited him. And now, for also political reasons, he's gone really far left. So I think it's a very uncomfortable place for him. I think he's had a lot of other issues going on with, his former, closest aide getting convicted of federal corruption charges. And I just think there's a lot of turmoil in the administration. There's, not a lot of people around him that, are giving him good advice, clearly, because they took about, 5 different positions after he said it. But what I thought was really bizarre was I am the spokesperson of the party. And when he made the comment, I tweeted from my personal account, criticizing it, like, the same reaction that most people had. And then a couple of his, top aides that work for the governor's office started tweeting back at me, which they normally don't do. I tweet quite a bit about the governor. And then all of a sudden they put out a press release from the governor's office.
With your name on it.
Second floor. With my name on it. Basically challenging me to defend President Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. And I'm like, oh, this is just too easy. I mean, it was teed right up for me. But, I think there are some on the left that just want to, erase history and fundamentally don't believe in American exceptionalism. And, there is this, like, growing sentiment out there. And, so I'm like, I'll gladly have that debate any day. So we had a ton of fun with it. We had, bought him a one-way bus ticket to Canada. That was a great thing that got a ton of national press. And, I think he rightly got skewered for saying such an insane thing.
And I'm going to be an unabashed shill here and just mention to listeners that Mark Molinaro, who is the Republican candidate for governor, and this is a guy who has a great deal of gratitude for the nation. He grew up on food stamps. He grew up with a single mom, and he and his brother, they work for every little thing they've got, patches in the Wranglers and the rest of it. Mark actually went on to be the youngest mayor of America at age 19. He had to go home and ask his mother if he could run for mayor, and he won. He was big national news 2020, and he was all over the place. And now he's running for governor, the guy who grew up on food stamps. So he sees American greatness implicitly and speaks to it really eloquently. But I just wanted to mention that on his website, which is Molinaro for ny.com, Molinaro, MOLINARO for ny.com. He is selling hats. They're blue hats, Democratic Party blue hats. And it says, quote, America was never that great, Cuomo 2020. And they're selling like hotcakes. They cost $17.76, which I love. And if anybody wants one, they're there. So.
But Bill, I think you make a really great point about that, because I think that's why that comment offended so many people, because it cuts across party lines, and it resonates with people that maybe aren't even that political, because so many people have stories like that, whether it's themselves or their grandparents. You know, it personally offended me so much. I think about my own experiences that I've had in this country. I didn't really come from a lot, and, you know, was able to put myself through college, through hard work, you know, but waitressing tables. My great uncle was a POW in World War II. My grandfather fought in World War II. And so many people have these stories. And, you know, I think it just really drove home this visceral reaction of, you know, just contempt and really out of touch and ignorance that, you know, that comment elicited.
Well,
yeah, I was Go ahead, Liz.
Well, I just said to Billy earlier, Jess, that to me, it's almost one of the most authentic things he said, because he looks like he believes it. Mm-hmm. He sounded like he believed it. He's so Absolutely. Bitter, and he's so angry, and it wasn't a slip of the tongue. There was nothing inartful as a joke, but really he's looking more and more angry every day. And that's bad. I don't care what level of government you're running or responsive for. That's just bad. It's bad for the people you're supposed to be representing. And the fact that he spends all of his, you know, hours in the day right now trying to figure out how to go after the president of the United States is a waste. And this is where there's a fabulous opportunity for a candidate like Mark Molinaro to come in.
Yeah, but also, I mean, who's been luckier than the Cuomo family? I mean, they've certainly worked for it, but it's an immigrant family. It's a great story. You figure there should be such gratitude there. And to your point, I was at a press conference at City Hall in New York City today, and it was hot out there. It always is in front of that City Hall. And we were there with a Holocaust survivor, a gentleman in his late 80s who spent 3 years in Auschwitz. And a very gentle soul, and the word he used for himself was timid. He had never spoken publicly before anywhere, and he requested, he got in touch with the Molinaro campaign and requested that he be able to address this. And he spoke very, very softly. It was very difficult for the press to hear him, but afterwards he began to break up and cry, and he was saying, you know, he was liberated, and I think a lot of his family was killed, liberated, and then came here and got a life. And he was followed by a speaker, an African-American candidate running for state assembly, who said, hey, you know, who knows better than I do that America's never perfect? You know what I mean? He came from slavery, but he went through the blessings that he's had. And it's, you know, they both got it in a way, and you get it, and Liz, you get it, and listeners get it in a way that Andrew Cuomo just doesn't. And it's, you know, it's like he comes and acts. I think Cynthia Nixon got it right. There was I can't remember the name of it. It was a Jeff Bridges movie from the 1980s, like Rocket Man or something, not Rocket Man, where a guy falls from outer space and he lands here and he starts imitating how people are. It's like Cuomo. I think Nixon's right. Like he's like, oh, this is what a progressive is supposed to sound like, or this is what a moderate's supposed to sound like, or this is what a conservative is supposed to sound like. And he plays the role, and it's not real. It's just so artificial.
Yeah, and I think people see that, and then, you know, like you said, the aftermath of it, how he handled it. Like, he could have just come out right away and said, that is not, you know, that's not what I intended. That's not what I meant. I apologize if I, you know, offended anybody. But he couldn't. And it was like, I mean, God knows they probably were polling the issue for 3 days before they finally turned it around and tried to walk it back with an artful comment.
Which they still haven't done.
People that, Right. They still haven't given a full apology, and he won't, because you're right, he is stubborn. And, you know, the people that cover him every day and pay attention, you know, really intimately to how he operates, it was, you know, a stunning thing to say, but not shocking, like not a surprise that he would say something like that, because he is, you know, this is the guy that says, I am the government. He said that conservatives have no place in New York. I mean, he says like these really outrageous things. He's had a ton of gaffes. He went after Governor Pataki after 9/11, saying, you know, the only thing he did was hold the mayor's coat. I mean, this is a guy that has a really dark personality from every indication that we've seen. You know, it just, they do a really good job keeping him behind closed doors. I mean, it's not often that you see him come out and talk to people and make comments on the cuff, off the cuff, and or talk to reporters and answer questions. I mean, even in handling the response to it, he didn't have a press conference. He had a conference call with reporters where you can choose who gets to ask a question and cut people off. And it's a very controlled environment, because they know that, you know, the man behind the curtain is a really nasty, angry guy. And there's countless stories of stuff that he said, you know, behind closed doors in private to people. So this is, you know, you're right, Liz, like he's angry and increasingly angry. And that's how, you know, he operates in a, you know, whatever he can do to amass power and threaten and attack people that criticize him or aren't with him. And that's his MO. Yeah. It's
I
a
wanted
pretty
to ask you both,
scary thing.
Yeah, I want to ask you both. And I mean, Liz, you worked in the Reagan Bush White House. You worked in crisis. Jess, you've done tons of crisis stuff over the years with various campaigns. You know, President Trump said, I forgot the exact words, but I think it was in a tweet, he suggested that Governor Cuomo or Andrew Cuomo has destroyed his career. Like, it's over. His national career in politics is over. Is that right to both of you? I just love to hear your takes on it. And what about the comment does that? Is it that it's always going to be available for TV ads? Like, what's your take on that? Is that right?
Well, I actually think it's a cumulative. I don't know that this is the one thing that did it. I've never thought he was electable nationally, largely because of what we're talking about. He's an angry, nasty man who's just, people are proud of what they do and where they are. And Jess, you know, what you just said about your whole family and the different people in your extended family who pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and served this country and put themselves through school and fought in wars. And they wake up and they are proud to be American. That Lee Greenwood song said it all. I always thought it was just such a beautiful thing when they play that. People stand up and sing at the top of their lungs. And it doesn't mean they're satisfied with every part of their lives or they love every elected official or they like having to do their homework or anything else. But they are proud of, to be here. It's why we're the beacon of hope for people all over the world. And to have a guy, a sitting governor of the most, arguably again, the most, prominent or important state in the country, or certainly the state that everyone, talks about and turns to for leadership, be so bitter and miserable about the state of the country and dismissive. And it's the biggest turnoff. And, we could go through the rest of his record, which Jess knows inside out, the corruption, the way he treats people, the way he treats staff. But people want sunshine. I think it's one of the reasons Hillary Clinton had a very big problem. We all talk about Trump's bombast, but his message was very positive. I'm going to fix such and such. You all deserve better. We can be better. And Cuomo, I've never heard that out of Cuomo's mouth at all. So I don't know what he's even running on now. It surprises me so much that the voters of New York are satisfied with the way things are going, because New York has been in the past a tremendous place to live, but and it still is for many reasons, but it's not affordable for people anymore. And yet he continues to, he's hanging in there in the polls, Billy. So that's a long way to say, I don't think it ruined his career any more than some of the other things cumulatively have. But I do think that it's the first thing that's going to come out of any political analyst's mouth now when they talk about who the candidates might be for 2020. He's off the table. So Kirsten Gillibrand's probably skipping right down Wall Street right now. One fewer New Yorker in the race. She's She got rid of Al Franken. She's not getting rid of Cuomo.
And Jess, what's your sense? I mean, you talk to a lot of national Republicans, in your role. Is that the sense that you just scratch them off the list? That's it for him?
Yeah, look, I don't. Yeah, and I agree with Liz. I don't know that he was ever on the list in a he was on lists, but I don't know that it was ever a real thing where he would end up, having any sort of traction in a presidential primary. I think, a ton of issues. Like, one, he doesn't like talking to regular people. He doesn't do any retail campaigning, which is all running for president. So I think that's incredibly difficult. Also, the national media, as tough as the New York press corps can be, certainly one of the toughest in the country, rivaled with DC. I think it's a different level of vetting, and you're forced to answer questions in a different way that, he is as governor. He's run a very insulated administration and failed to really answer a lot of questions from the press. And I don't think you can get away with that in the same way running for president. But, I think, and the record and all of those things, I just think that I don't think there's ever been a really compelling reason. And also he just doesn't fit with where the heart of the Democratic Party is right now. That's his biggest issue. But, you brought up an interesting point. I think, say what you will about President Trump, whether, you love him or lukewarm on him or don't like him that much at all. I don't think anyone questioned that there was a level of patriotism that was very refreshing after the Obama years. I think he took a lot of time to talk about the troops and supporting our troops and, I love America. There's the tone and language was different from, Obama, which was just, it was a little more cerebral.
Conciliatory always, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I think that was a really welcome change for people. And I think, it kind of reminded people of how, presidents used to speak about the country, that American exceptionalism. Like, that's okay to say that America is the most exceptional nation in the world. Like, that's not a bad thing. And it kind of gave people, Merry Christmas. Like, it gave people that freedom that they could, feel that way and be proud about it. And I think that was something that attracted people to him. And I'll make a bet right now. I really hope I'm not wrong, but I will bet that we will not have a president of this country that has ever said that we have never been that great. I'm putting my money on that.
I just think we have to play that clip again. Can we just play that clip one more time?
We're not going to make
too good.
America great again. It was never that great. We have not reached greatness. We will reach greatness when every American is fully engaged. We will reach greatness when discrimination and stereotyping against women, 51% of our population, is gone.
And Jess, I heard you talking about Kathy Hochul. And this is the guy talking about stereotyping women. What was the chocolate chip cookie thing I heard you talk about this week?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, the irony of the whole thing is like, he's had a long list of gaffes, but one, he's covered up sexual harassment inside his own administration where whistleblowers have been fired and officials, the heads of agencies have been protected. Kathy Hochul, who's his lieutenant governor, the Cuomo started this women's equality party, minor party ballot line. And so they get this bus and they go on this big tour with the women's equality bus tour, and Kathy Hochul's on it, and he forces her to hand out cookies to all the people on the bus. It's like, he just doesn't get it. You had a female reporter ask him about the sexual harassment and the Me Too movement, and he said to the female reporter, who happens to be a really solid reporter that's been covering government in New York for a
Karen
long
DeWitt.
time, really
That's right, yep.
respected journalist, Karen DeWitt. And he said, "Sir, you're doing a disservice to women by asking me that question." I mean, you cannot make it up.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, this is the guy that coined the phrase, vote for Cuomo, not the...
Yeah,
and
he did.
I will refrain from using the word, you know, a derogatory word.
Right, exactly.
Brad Koch, when his father was running against Ed Koch. That's right.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Well,
you know, the hypocrisy.
Busted completely.
Well, he's also the guy that ran the primary against the first African-American nominee for governor in 2002.
Yeah,
Carl
right.
McCall. You know,
and you know what?
Like, please give me a break. I mean,
well, in the same speech the other day, you know, America's only going to be great when there's equality for all and access to opportunity, and women have rights, and minorities have equal status. And this is a governor who lives in Chappaqua, where it's 92% white, less than 1% black, a median family income of $180,000. He's not exactly a man of the people. So I don't know.
I live in the town right next door, and we work for those people.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
how
you know what I thought?
With it.
Oh, completely. And the other thing that, like, no one said this, and people are probably afraid to say it, but by the way, his partner, Sandra Lee, is also like a product of the American dream. Like, she's an American dream success story. She grew up, I think, I remember reading an article about her a long time ago, you know, from a very poor family, and it's why she, you know, ended up getting into the semi-homemade thing. That was like her shtick to, you know, do low cost meals for, you know, women, and that, you know, were on really tight budgets, and that she was a self-made person and has done so well. So it's like, you're living in the house that the American dream helped build. You know, it's such an out of touch thinking. I have a hard time understanding like where he even got that. But, and by the way, what does when every American is engaged even mean? Engaged in what?
Right. What does he think we're all doing all day?
In their own lives.
right,
Like,
we're waiting for the government to give us a job or something. Yeah. You know, Jess, you talked about you touched on something before that I think was, and Liz and I spoke about this before the show, that I think is exactly right. You talked about patriotism and American exceptionalism, and President Trump talking about that. And it's interesting. And I do, you know, have trouble with the president at times, certainly, but he had a national message. And before the 2016 campaign, it was a very simple one. It was to make America great. And it was actually an old Reagan message, but it was simple, and he spoke to that quite well. And I remember talking to students when, you know, we'll go on there and give advice about, you know, political consulting and the rest of it. And I would always lament the fact that ad campaigns are no longer national. It's all targeted. It's all 50+1. It's digital. It's fire up the base and suppress the ones that don't like you, and you know, kind of, you know, dirty nitty gritty. And I always love the type of politics or the type of rhetoric that appeal to everybody. Even, you know, even Howard Dean, when he was the DNC chairman, did a 50 state strategy. I mean, he wasn't my kind of politics, but he went after every voter. And Reagan did that, I think, quintessentially in the Morning Again in America ads. That was, you know, it spoke to the national ethos, and Trump is doing that again. And I think that's what the missing ingredient. Like when you said people are losing gratitude or not plugging in or Liz, you mentioned about no positive message. It's because I don't think the campaigns are delivering positive messages because they're so worried about getting, you know, left-handed Irishmen that read Sports Illustrated, you know, and they want to talk to that person. There's no room for the soaring, this is who we are. And I think that's missing. And I think Trump to some extent has touched that. Reagan certainly captured it, but I don't see anybody else out there with it. Certainly not any of the Democrats looking at 2020.
Well, and I think the way Trump has managed to do it, it's interesting that the way, you know, he can sound so negative, and yet really what he's saying to everybody is, you deserve better. We deserve better. You deserve better infrastructure. You deserve better safety at the border. You deserve better economy. And unfortunately, what he also does is tear other people down at the same time. You know, it's not a zero-sum game, and that's how he communicates. But his the people who are responding to it see, yeah, I do deserve better. We're all working hard. This country is great. We have this incredible potential and we're not reaching it, or we used to reach it. We got to get back to that. But there is still a very positive message there. And I look at these Democrats running for the midterms and also the posturing going on for 2020. And as I said earlier, I don't see anything positive coming from it at all. And Billy and I were talking earlier, Jess, about a new debate prep manual that's out. I don't know if you've heard about this, if you read about it. Two longtime Democratic campaign gurus and strategists have come up with this expert guide on debate tactics. And it's very different from what we all grew up with, where, and how candidates should prepare for and conduct themselves. And now it's, rather than trying to persuade the undecided voters or actually grow your base, the strategy is, annihilate in the debate and only just try to bring home your own voters. And that's, I think it's a mistake. The same way I think that ads that only, target your base are a mistake. But I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually didn't see that. But look, I think, debating is the kind of thing where it really is kind of a unique application to the circumstances of the race and the two candidates and what their strengths and weaknesses are and, all these extenuating factors, I think, certainly, and with regard to debate. But I do agree with you guys. Like, I think a lot of times, like, people will forgive you if they don't need to agree with you on every single issue, but they want to kind of know where your heart is. They want to know what drives you, like what's your overarching philosophy about things, and I think that having that larger positive message sometimes and telling your story can be a really powerful way to engage voters and just get them to like pay attention to you, because right now you have, we are a very divided country. You have, certainly going into these midterms, I think, a lot of forget the districts, the fact that they're, mostly drawn to protect, whether they're Democratic or Republican, gerrymandered districts. But then, in the ones that are competitive, you have the base on both sides, I think, pretty energized this year because the Democrats have gone so far left and, just pushing these crazy policies, saying these crazy things that feel really out of touch with reality. And so I think Republicans are, they're talking about impeachment and, just undoing all the progress that, economic progress that we've had so far. So I think, certainly on the congressional level, people are thinking like, well, I don't want to go back to Pelosi. And, the base is really energized against that and trying to block that. And then you have the Democrats that hate Trump and they want to make take out their anger on Trump. And then you're left with, a very small slice of people that are kind of willing to look at both the candidates and their backgrounds and the issues that they care about. And so, and one of the things that I've found fascinating, really only in the last few weeks, but I've been looking at a good amount of polling, and the common thread that I keep noticing is that it's kind of a kitchen sink election. There's not one thing that is really driving people. Like, of course, the economy and jobs are a top issue because that really impacts, people's everyday life. But it's a little bit of everything. So when it's a little bit of everything, does that mean it's an election about nothing? And then people just end up, voting party line, voting their candidate. I'm very
or not voting.
To see how that kind of shakes out, or not voting at all. Exactly. And if they think it's not competitive, do they end up staying home? Or if their chosen person in a primary doesn't win, do they end up staying home? It's getting increasingly difficult, I think, to kind of run competitive elections and elections that are persuadable in this kind of climate.
Oh, no question. It's a smaller and smaller audience. Yeah. I mean, the audience now that's accessible to persuasion people is really getting tiny, and that'll change. I mean, it's happened before, but it'll go back. But Reagan won 49 states, and if you ask Liz, your dear friend Ed Rollins, he might say we even got the 50th state there that year. But I can't imagine that happening. It's just everything is too sliced and diced.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how Republican voters feel and how if they hold their own Republican representatives accountable for the failure to do anything substantive on health care. After all the promises to repeal and replace, we got the mandate repeal, but that's about it. And so there's that. I've seen some polling that says a lot of Republicans are really angry about the omnibus bill, that $1.3 trillion. And even Trump has said that he really regrets signing that. And he doesn't usually admit when he regrets something. So there's that, these are hardcore Republican voters. And if they're going to blame any of their, their own congressmen for voting yes. Or if all of that is really completely overcome or overshadowed by how great the economy is doing right now. And the people, the tax cuts have put a lot more money in people's pockets, and now it's really helping business. And then with the GDP growing the way it is, I'm curious. I don't know, but I have seen polling that says that the Republican voters are not happy that their own folks basically turn their back on the promise.
Yeah, I think we're certainly going to find out.
It is interesting. Like the debt question is interesting to me too, because that was, something I feel like was at the forefront that every Republican was talking for candidate for Congress was talking about and Senate was talking about for a long time, like certainly throughout, the 2 terms of Obama's presidency. And it's not really at the forefront of discussion and, quote unquote, Trump's new Republican Party. Not to say that there's not Republicans that still don't care very much about it, but you don't hear the candidates talking about it in the same way. Trump was focused on, more trade deals and tax cuts, and, the debt kind of fell to the back burner a little bit.
It did.
So it's interesting to see like how that, just rhetorically, not to say that voters don't care about it. So
I'm going to ask you a quiz question just for fun, Jess. The last show that we did, Liz and I talked almost exclusively about the debt. Guess who we had on to talk about it?
Who?
Joe Carvin.
No. Oh God. Well, there's nobody better.
No.
Did you have anxiety at the end of it? I always.
Oh my Lord! I was shocked on it.
Up for a week.
Check the life insurance policy.
We were talking about, it's $20 trillion. He said it's $80 trillion. 20's just, and I thought, oh gosh, this could be a long hour. God bless him.
There's no one better to, he really is. But it's a scary thing when you listen to him talk.
And you can say it in 5 languages. Hey, Jess, up to you. We promised we'd get you off at some point. Do you want to stay on for the rest of the time? We've got about 10 more minutes, I think. Or what do you think? Or do you want to jump off and
yeah, if you guys want to have me, I'd be happy to stay chatting.
Yeah.
So, Jess, I'd love to talk about SALT, right? So the state and local tax deductions. And so OMB is waiting. They're going to issue a rule pretty soon on SALT. But you probably know this, that 4 states have sued. Of course, New York's one of them, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Maryland. They're challenging the caps in court as unconstitutional. And a lot of legal experts are saying that, they don't have any standing, that the suit's not going to go through. But I just wonder politically how you, both of you, because Jess, Bill, you're dealing with this with the Molinaro campaign, and Jess, you represent, Dan Donovan and others. But how you think this is going to play with voters, and if they're going to punish some of the Republicans who didn't stand up to the president on this. But more importantly, why doesn't Cuomo own this? Why don't people stop and say to the governor, why don't you do something about our taxes?
cut the taxes.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, to me, that's the obvious
issue.
answer.
Yeah.
I mean, these high tax states that are, just destroying people, the property taxes, the state and local income taxes, and if there's a way to resolve this that doesn't involve a lawsuit.
Yeah. Getting a new governor.
And everyone would be better for it, exactly. It is a really interesting issue, and I think it's a mixed bag. I did a lot of number crunching on it when the bill first came out because of the impact with New York and New York being such a diverse state in itself. You have upstate has a high property taxes, especially relative to their home values, but comparatively less than the Westchester and Long Island, where you have, you could easily be paying, the median income taxes, $20,000, $30,000, depending on what municipality you live in. Right. And then in New York City, like Dan had this also unique issue of you have an extra income tax that you pay in New York City. And Staten Island is, one of the more residential areas, of course, in the city. There's a lot of homeowners there. So they're paying property taxes and they're paying the New York City income tax on top of state and federal taxes. So it can be a very big burden on people. And, you're seeing it with people leaving New York in droves. So I think, that's why you saw a lot of Republicans split on it. Dan fought really hard to try to get the cap increased, and they, as well as Lee Zeldin and John Fassa. There were several others that fought to get that cap raised beyond the $10,000, and they weren't successful because the problem is it costs money, and then if they moved to do it to get those votes, they would have lost others on the the dead hawk side. So it was kind of a numbers game, I think, politically.
At least they got the 10,000, though. I mean, that was some
right. At least
there.
They got the 10,000. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And so, I think that it was an interesting dynamic in Dan's race because he just had a Republican primary, and it was a pretty aggressive primary. He won it resoundingly, but one of the things he was being attacked on from the right was not supporting Trump's tax bill. But I always thought it was kind of a strange, politically, it was a difficult position to put yourself where you're squarely advocating for something that would have actually raised taxes on your own constituents. But, the dirty secret with it is that, if this bill really only hurts wealthier individuals, like if you're making, $250,000, $300,000, like $250 and up, then you're either about, and you have an average property tax bill in New York, I think, you're probably just cutting even with the new bill. And the more money you make and, the worse it ends up being. So this whole notion, especially Cuomo railing on and on that, this is a tax cut for the wealthy is just not accurate. It's actually far beneficial for, middle and lower income people. They ended up, doing okay. Granted, not as great as people in, South Dakota, but better than they were before. And to your point, I think it's a real impetus, and I hope voters think about this. It's kind of a clunky argument to make, but the fact is, if we cut our taxes in New York and had real reform, then it wouldn't be a problem at all. So I think, Mark's done a good job, I think, talking about the issue, and some of, certainly the state Republican Party has, and several candidates, but all the more reason. And we could have the same kind of economic growth that we have, that we're seeing nationally, have that in New York too. It would be tremendous.
Yeah. But you also see that dynamic around the country. I mean, for people who for those listening from California or Illinois or other high tax states, you end up the states tax businesses out to other states, south, west, north, east, anywhere but that state, and then they end up incentivizing giving away billions of dollars worth of tax breaks and cash grants to try and encourage businesses to come in that they had chased out with high taxes. And so the taxpayer gets hit twice. Like you lose the revenue of what the company would have paid in corporate tax, but you don't get the tax break yourself. And you get into this crazy kind of spiral that feeds on itself. We see that in New York, that's happening in California and other big states. It's madness. The answer, as Jess correctly identified, is lower the damn taxes. I mean, for God's sakes, that's what brings in jobs.
The fact that they blame this whole thing on Trump, exactly right. And I just don't know why the voters don't hold the governor and the state legislators who've been through it accountable for this. But they don't.
I know, and I think people in high tax states are just they have been beaten down into this acceptance that New York is just an expensive place to live. California is an expensive place to live, and that is never going to change. But it could change. I mean, you could totally change how we spend money in this state, and Massachusetts would make a difference.
Massachusetts did it. I mean, Taxachusetts.
Yes,
and they actually changed it. And you know what? The school scores went up. Are they still the best schools in the country by score now, Liz?
They were last year. Yeah,
they were. It's like they actually did it. They did a considered effort. It's a Democratic state. They elected a lot of Republicans that were good on taxes, and it changed the nature of the state. Pretty amazing.
Yes, and there's no sales tax on some items under $125. Clothes. I mean, you can. A lot of other states could take a page out of this book here.
Anyway, I think we're running out of time. But anyway, thank you all for listening.
Yes, he did. Any brotherhood from sea